Telling time in Spanish, Part 3. If you're using an analog watch like I do, there is a third way of telling time in Spanish, which we will look at in this video. If you haven't seen telling time in Spanish 1 and 2, stop this video now and take a look at those first. In telling time in Spanish 1, we learned that there are two important phrases when telling time. Son las, if you're telling what time it is right now, and a las, if you're talking about at what time you're going to be doing something. So if it's 4 o'clock right now, we would say son las cuatro. It's 4 o'clock. Or if I'm doing something at 4 o'clock, I would say a las cuatro. Likewise, if it is something we're dealing with that isn't happening exactly on the hour, for example, it's 9:40 right now. It's 9:40. Son las 9:40. Or I'm going to do something at 9:40 this evening. A las 9:40. We've learned that you can just add the number of the minutes, in this case 40 or 40, right after the number of the hour, which is 9 or 9 o'clock. And this is very handy if you are using a digital clock. Most of you use a digital clock. A digital clock has the numbers, and it's easy just to read the numbers right off. Las 9:40. However, if you use an analog clock or watch like Mr. Gardner does, there is a little bit different way of telling time. Why would you ever use an analog clock? Well, if you're like Mr. Gardner and have bad eyesight, can you tell what time it is from looking at these? On the analog side, I can see that it's 3 o'clock right away. I don't even have to read the numbers. So when we deal with an analog clock, when the big hand goes all the way around, it represents 1 hour of time. Each time the big hand goes from 12 and then goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and gets back up to 12 again, a full hour has passed away. The face of the clock represents 1 hour. And so when you're using a digital clock, what we do, an analog clock, what we do oftentimes is divide the hour up into segments. So if I divide the hour in half, I've got 30 minutes or half an hour. That's media hora. Media is the word in Spanish for half. Half is the word in English for media. Una media hora. So if I'm doing something at 5:30, I can say, voy al cine a las 5:30. I'm going to the movies at 5:30, literally at 5.5, at 5.5 hours. Or if it's 5:30 right now, I would say, son las 5:30. It's 5:30. Literally, there are 5.5 hours. Son las 5:30. So this is another way we can say 5:30. And people usually use this when they're using an analog clock. But wait a minute. What about if it isn't exactly at 5:30? We can divide the hour into half, and then we can divide the half hour in half. If you do the math in your head, and only crazy people like math teachers do this kind of math in your head, you know that a half of a half is a fourth. And the word for fourth in Spanish is cuarto. Cuarto is another way we can refer to 15 minutes because it is 1/4 of an hour. But you got to be careful. Cuarto means fourth. Don't confuse it with cuatro, which means four. Notice the only difference between these two words is the position of the R and the T. A fourth is cuarto. Number 4 is cuatro. Got to be careful with that one. And you're going to say, hey, I thought the word cuarto meant Rome. Well, yeah, it does. It has several meanings, but in this case, when we're talking about time or quarts of milk, it is a fourth. So if it's 2:15 right now, I can say son las 2:15. Literally, it's 2 1/4. Or if I'm going to do something at 2:15, I'd say I'm going to do that a las 2:15, at 2 1/4. We would say at 2:15 in English. $5:15 is 5:15. And here comes the tongue twister. 4:15 is 4:15. But you will notice we're only dealing with the right hand of the clock. 8:15 is son las 8:15, or if I'm doing something at 8:15, it's a las 8:15. Or 11:15 is a las 8:15 at 11:15. Or if it's 11:15 right now, it would be son las 11:15. But what happens if it's 11:45? Well, you're going to say, that's easy. It's 11 3/4, because I've got 1, 2, 3, that is 1, 2, 3, groups of 15 minutes. So it's got to be son las 11:03, or a las 11:03. Right? Wrong. No, you can't say that. Take a look at the hour hand. When it is 15 to 12, that is 11:45, notice the hour hand nudges a little bit closer to 12. And so it's actually 15 minutes until 12. Son las 12:45. It's literally 12 minus 1/4 of an hour. A las 12:45, at 12 minus 1/4 of an hour. Now, we only use this actually if we're using an analog clock. Because if you're wearing a digital watch, that's what you'll see on the right, and you'll say, son las 11:45. Nobody wearing a digital watch would say, son las 12:15. They don't do that math in their head. However, if they're using an analog clock, which is on the left there, they will probably say, faltan 15 para las 12, that is, there is lacking 15 to 12, or they might say son las 12:15, literally it's 12 minus a fourth of an hour. But most you can use son las 11:45 and stay with your digital watch if you want to. So we use the words medio y cuarto if you're using an analog watch or clock. I find most people like the digital way better, and that is perfectly good. But you will hear this occasionally, and that's why I wanted to present it to you. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.